Live at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indy, Chris Brown, Steve Tasker, and a good friend of the show joining us here for our final hour from Indy. It is senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell, who's been making the rounds and grinding the tape. Do you bring your tape on the road with you? Do you have a ready-made laptop with files ready to pull at the moment's notice?
You know, it's funny you say that. I don't, by the way, for various reasons.
We got to get them to work on that.
But, you know, I feel like I'm way behind this year because last year, unfortunately, because I did not go to the Super Bowl and there was no combine, I actually had 9-10 more days of being in the office watching tape.
And we know what happens when you're there.
Right. And so I was way ahead of the game last year, whereas this year we just had the Super Bowl. It seemed like last week.
Right.
And now here's the combine.
Yeah, everything's pushed back.
Now here's the combine, so I'm losing those days of being able to watch tape, and it frustrates me.
Yeah, I know that you're one of those people. Were you on the field for some of these tests?
Yeah, I was on the field.
Okay, so give me overall, name a guy or two or a handful of guys that were like, oh, I didn't know that about him, or this surprised me when I saw him.
In all honesty, Steve, I don't take, and this is just me, and I know that if you talk to scouts and GMs and all that, they'll tell you it's a part of the process. I don't watch it that seriously. You know, right. I just feel like, to me, and by the way, I did speak to a team that thinks there's almost zero importance to this, by the way. You know, I'm talking about the on-field. Obviously, they do the medicals and all that. Right. But the on-field, they said there's like zero relevance to this.
We've heard some of that, too.
Yes,
and I'm closer to that. You know, again, the one thing I would love to be able to do would be actually to speak to guys, which I don't get to do. But I will always come back to watching the tape. That, to me, is the most important thing. I want to watch a guy play football.
We were talking to Tom Telesco, talked to Brandon Bean during the week, and they're going, you know, being here, it's only about sitting where you and I are sitting, talking to the kid. Because
and the medical.
Yeah, right. But that is nothing. GM's not going to be in that room.
No,
right. So
right.
He says, you know, I don't need to watch him run 40. Just show me what he ran.
What's his number?
You know, what's his number?
And by the way, I'll tell you a very quick story. It's possible I told you this 2 years ago, too. But at my first year at the Combine, which I believe was 1998, I've been coming every year since. So my first year, I'm trying to insinuate myself into all different conversations just to meet people, you know, and not be a pain in the you-know-what. Just, you know, try to meet people so they look at me and go, oh, yeah, you belong here. You know, I was staying out late at night. You know,
I've been doing that my whole life.
Right.
Yeah.
I was staying out late at night, you know, which I don't do anymore, but, you know, because that's where the coach, you know, you know the whole routine here. And I remember sitting at the Combine my first year with a bunch of scouts, and there were some old-time scouts. And one of the guys had the classic Southern accent, and he says, not to me personally, but to the group, he says, you know what the 40 tells you? He says it tells you that fast guys run fast and slow guys run slow. Yeah. And I kind of feel that that's what the 40 kind of tells you. Yeah. I mean, I kind of know from watching tape, like Calvin Austin yesterday, the kid from Memphis. Yeah. I did his tape actually, today's Friday, right? Yes, I think I did his tape on Monday, so he's fresh in my mind. And you know what? He runs really fast on film. He has great play speed, and so when he ran a 4, whatever his official, I don't know if you have his official time there, Chris.
He was a 4.32, I believe.
All right, so if it's 4.32, I pretty much
4.32.
I knew from watching his film that he would run without question under a 4.4. I don't need to see the 4.32 to know that he's fast.
Yeah,
right.
You know?
Right, and I know there were people on social media that were mad when they saw, you know, Tyquan Thornton from Baylor, the kid that had the fastest time, unofficially ran a 4.21, and then the next day it's a 4.28. People are like, I wanted him to have the record, and I'm just like, I really don't think 0.07 of a second is going to impact his draft stock.
No, and he's a guy I haven't seen, so I can't speak to him. But, you know, the question, and Steve, we were talking about this before we came on live now, is what is the correlation if you look back over the years? And I made it a point to ask Steve about Andre Reed, you know, who he knows well, Hall of Famer, great receiver on those Bills teams. What's the correlation between being able to run fast in a straight line in shorts and a T-shirt with being a wide receiver in the NFL?
Yeah.
Probably has more to do with being a gunner on special teams, right?
The thing about it, here's the important aspect of being a wide receiver. Certainly, the faster you run, the better, because you can run away from people and they struggle to keep up, and it sets a little bit of desperation in them, so they commit quicker to a fake, right? Because there's a little bit of fear that you're going to do something, so they kind of react quick and they try and get on top of it. The thing that is as much as speed is the ability to stop hard stop fast, and accelerate fast.
Reaccelerate. Yes,
reaccelerate.
Right.
Change direction without losing speed, or faster than they can stop and start themselves.
Correct.
That is the trait that sets wide receivers apart. That trait alone.
Because let's think about this. With the work I do, guys, as you know, I'm trying to project and transition guys to the NFL. I'm not watching guys in a vacuum. I mean, obviously, you get a feel for a guy's traits, and we can talk about some specific guys, particularly with the Cole Beasley news. Obviously, you're looking at traits, attributes, characteristics. But then the next thing I think about is, okay, what are they going to face in the NFL? They're going to face man. They're going to face press man. They're going to face off man. They're going to face zone. So what do you have to be able to do to get open against the different and multiple coverages that you face in the NFL? Now, running fast, no one would say they'd rather have a slow guy than a fast guy. We know that.
Right.
But and certainly defenses might play differently if they feel that there's a guy that can get over the top. That does impact how defenses might play a particular team.
Yeah.
Right. So that's of value. But if you're just talking about the particular receiver himself, how often in the NFL do we see receivers just simply run by corners, as if the corner's not there? And I was fortunate enough to have a great conversation with Peanut Tillman an hour before I just came on with you guys, and he was saying the same thing. He said, it's the guys who had incredible quickness in and out of routes that were really far more troublesome than just guys who were straight line fast.
There's also now they've elevated the concepts of these offenses so that it used to be you draw a line on a paper and at the end of it there's an arrow.
Right.
And that's the direction you ran. Now they say, listen, and you break the huddle, and you heard Steve Young when NFL Films did a great thing. Steve Young would call the play and he'd tell Jerry Rice, hey, give me something creative over there if it's cloud coverage.
Right.
Which means if the guy's off, just go out there and run around and get open.
Right.
And that's the chemistry that they have.
Right.
So and they put concepts in for guys, just say, listen, I want you here at a certain, when the play develops, I want you there by yourself.
That's what Chan Gailey did with Stevie Johnson.
That's
who
right.
never ran two routes the same in his life.
That's right. And that's why DBs had problems with Stevie. There was nothing there were no keys or traits or
anything. Never did anything the same.
Every route was different.
Right.
So their coaches are starting to incorporate that in to a guy's ability, and it's taken it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, and the general point before we start getting into maybe some specific guys is just that pure speed in and of itself does not make for a great receiver.
Right. So let's jump in, and I've probably watched like 15 guys so far. I'm behind.
Oh, good for you. I've probably done about the same.
I'm behind just like you are.
Yeah.
And the guy that I think, at least that I have seen to this point, hands is the number one thing that stands out with him is Jahan Dotson. His hands are unbelievable to me. Outside his frame for not a gigantic guy, like one-handed grabs and pulling it in, like stuff outside, because his quarterback did not look terribly accurate.
No. And you hit on a guy whose tape I really like, so I'm glad you brought him up first. You probably didn't know that I liked him.
No.
You just threw out the name. I watched his tape from 2020 and his tape from 2021, and I really like Jahan Dotson a lot.
Yeah.
I think, again, we live in an NFL now, and this is another thing, where guys are not necessarily put in boxes as to where they line up. I mean, even someone like Cole Beasley, who seems like the quintessential slot receiver, there were many snaps he lined up outside. We don't live in a world anymore where a guy is just a slot receiver, because offenses have expanded and broadened and changed. So someone like Jahan Dotson, someone might say, and I think he weighed 178 here, but I found out from someone who knows him well that he really plays at like 185, which is still not big.
Right.
But
he
he's
got
more,
lighter so he could run fast.
Maybe. But the point is that, that guy, 10 years ago, someone might have said, oh, he's 185, he's a slot. Well, he's so much more than that.
Yeah.
He can line up anywhere, particularly in an expansive offense like the Bills. Let's say, they run, because I'm sure Ken Dorsey will have a lot of the same principles that Brian Daboll had. He might tweak a few things because he has his own thoughts, but he will not change everything because Josh Allen has proven to be phenomenal within the concepts.
Yeah.
They're not going to change the whole deal.
But Dotson seems to me, at least just from what I've seen, not only does he have great hands and great outside of his body frame in terms of catch radius for not a gigantic guy, good after the catch, seems to know where the sticks are. So I'm thinking, intelligence here, sharp route runner, gets separation
fearless
pretty
and competitive.
consistently.
And fearless and competitive. That stood out to me watching his tape, because very often I look for that with smaller guys. Are they looking to play just in space? Because that something like that does limit how you can use a guy. We'll get to a guy who's like that, in my opinion, momentarily, who actually ran very well yesterday as well. But Dotson was not a guy that looked to just be in space. He had no problem working in the middle and being highly competitive and catching through contact if need be.
Yeah, you go to all these guys have highlight films on YouTube, right?
Of course,
so you go out there and look. The first catch on Dotson's highlight reel, you can turn the rest of it off. That thing, he spears a little on the 5-yard line, goes up with his right hand, spears it like a fish,
right?
And just pulls it in. Doesn't ever put his left hand on it. Walks in against Ohio State. It was, that. It sounds crazy.
Steve was done.
Yes, if you can catch the ball,
that was the extent of Steve's tape study.
That's right.
Yeah,
one play.
yeah, that was
more
the
than
extent.
it's more than I usually do. Therefore, I feel like I have a real in-depth knowledge of this guy.
He usually leaves that to you, Greg.
Right.
I watched the first.
Well,
play
that's
of his
okay. That's
room.
what the guys on Twitter do. They watch 20 plays and they tweet it out as if they've seen 5 games.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's. But you're right. There are a number of guys on this, and it is a little bit, generally speaking, smaller, lighter guys seem to be able to quick and do change direction really quickly. But it does come with its own set of, generally speaking, limitations. One, durability, and two, the inability, the lack of willingness for contact.
And Dotson's not that guy.
Right.
Now, I think that, and it's not a concern with Dotson necessarily, but I think that there's always a sense of how will a smaller receiver handle physical press man, not mirror match press man where the corner might be right up on him but doesn't touch him, but how will he handle the guy who, as soon as he tries to get off the ball, just sticks him right in his chest,
and has strength and power,
and has strength and power to do that.
Punch
correct.
Him,
and again, sometimes you don't know the answer to that watching tape. Now, keep in mind, there's ways to get away from that. You can make the guy a Z receiver, meaning he's off the ball. It's tougher to press those guys. The Z receiver is also the movement receiver, so you can put him in motion to give him free access. You can put him in the slot at times. They can be off the ball as well at times, and you can then use motion as well. So if you feel that a receiver like Dotson, who has tremendous traits, but if you just feel that, hey, maybe we don't want him on the ball, there's ways to get him free access off the ball.
And for our listeners who don't know, he's a Penn State guy, so that's one guy to keep an eye on. Who was the next guy that you wanted to bring up that you said maybe doesn't get into the traffic?
Chris Olave, who I know, again, if you watch his tape, he's a smooth strider. I expected him to run well. But watching his tape, and again, another guy, I've actually watched his tape for 3 years because I kept thinking he was going to come out, and he kept coming back to Ohio State. So I've seen a lot of Chris Olave. And while he's smooth, he's fluid, I think he's reasonably refined as a route runner. He very much struck me as an outside-the-numbers receiver. I don't think there's a physical dimension to his game at all.
So he doesn't want to get into the messy areas.
That was my sense watching his tape. I can't speak to what's in his head. I'm just talking about what the tape shows. Right. So I think, to me, that really suggests that he's not your bell cow, so to speak. He's not your number one guy.
I will say, though, what Steve was just referencing with respect to being able to start and reaccelerate, he has a stutter hesitation move.
Yep.
Where he gets back up to top speed in like 3 steps.
And he leaves
people in the dust.
He's very smooth. I mean, there is a somewhat explosive element to his game, clearly, but I'm very curious when he gets to the NFL. Well, I'm curious to see who drafts him and how they think they're going to deploy him. Because I'm just giving you my opinion based on a lot of tape study of him. I think he's essentially a complement who's going to work outside the numbers.
So like a number 2.
If he is exactly that, nobody's going to take a guy like that in round 1, right?
My sense
probably
is,
not.
From what I hear, he will go in round 1, and I'm not going to sit here and say I'm right and they'll be disappointed. Maybe I'll be wrong.
Right.
This is what I saw on tape.
And he's a slight-framed guy, too, so I would think
he's long and linear. Yeah. He doesn't have – he's smooth and fluid, but he's not twitchy as far as his hips.
Yeah.
Right. He's
not
linear.
A wiggle guy.
No, he's linear.
Yeah. He's not a wiggle guy.
Yeah.
Right. What about – well, we mentioned him already, Calvin Austin.
Oh.
Super fast. Now, did I read right? He used to be a running back, or he's been somewhat of a hybrid, and now they moved him full time to receiver.
He was a track guy because I looked him up, and
that makes sense.
He set records in 4x100 relay, running the 200 meters. I mean, this guy's a track guy, but he's short, but he's not small. He's he got off press in college. Again, press is better in the NFL. We all know that. But he got off press without much of a problem. He was a receiver to me, not just a speed guy.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by him. See, and he's another guy. In the old days, you look at his height and his weight, Chris, and people would say slot.
Yeah.
He's going to be more than that. I mean, you look at what teams do in the league now, the way they move receivers around.
Right. That was going to be my next thing, because you think about what the Bills did with Isaiah McKenzie, who's literally my height. He's 5'7",
right,
and he may weigh 15 more pounds than me.
Right.
But they
well, then
used
why
him
aren't
in
you playing in the NFL?
Because I don't run whatever he runs. But and I don't jump as high as he does either, and I'm too old. But the way he was deployed among other receivers, these jet sweeps and lining up in the backfield and all of those things, Calvin Austin can do all of that,
without question.
Yeah. He really reminded me in his mannerisms, the way he ran, of a lot of an Isaiah McKenzie.
I think his build was a little.
Yeah, he's a little thicker.
Yes, he's a little thicker. And he ran like that. I mean, he ran like a little bit of a guy's, I don't care, let's go.
Right.
So I thought Calvin Austin was one of the more impressive guys. We had a list of like 7, 8 guys. I think Calvin Austin is right up there at the top of that
liked
list.
his tape a lot.
Yeah, I did too.
He changes angles for defenders.
Without question. And by the way, catches the football.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times track guys don't catch the football really well. Yeah. He catches the football.
And also, a lot of track guys don't have instincts with the ball in their hands of how to get every yard they're supposed to get.
Right.
He makes good cuts, has good vision with the ball in his hands, makes guys miss. Allows his blockers to get out, uses his speed. He has good instincts with the ball in his hand.
Yeah, he was another guy whose tape I really liked.
Yeah.
How tough an evaluation was Christian Watson? Not only because of the FCS competition, but because he was this tall, angular receiver that has wheels. But I don't know. I finished watching him, and I was wondering, is it all there? And I was trying to compensate for, sometimes he's playing FCS competition.
Who he ran by like they were ninth graders.
Right. Like Steve was saying, he was playing against dental students.
Right,
dental students. So.
And that's not going to happen in the NFL. The guy he absolutely reminded me of, and he has the exact same height, weight measurements. What was his 40? I'm sure it was.
He ran a 4.36.
Okay. Yeah. So who's he coming out, and that's all I can speak to. He was exactly Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's the exact same height and weight, and Valdez-Scantling ran a 4.37. So to me, that's who Watson is.
Okay.
Yeah, I liked when I was watching him. I watched him a little bit. I liked him a lot. I think he does at the FCS level what you'd expect a guy coming out of the NFL draft to do. He dominated.
Yeah.
The guys he was supposed to beat, he beat
easily. He beat him easily. Chris, it looked silly.
Yes.
I mean,
right.
it looked silly. Now, again, he's another guy who's very long and linear.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned years ago, you may know Al Saunders, who coached in the league for a long time, and Al's a good friend of mine, and he was a receivers coach at heart. And he would explain to me, because we'd say, well, he doesn't have good hands. And he'd say, well, you can teach a guy to catch the ball the right way. And I think Watson needs work on how to catch the ball. It might seem silly, but on a lot of in-breaking routes where the ball's out in front, it struck me watching his tape. He wasn't sure how to catch those balls. And he dropped a few of those.
Yeah, that's certain. Yeah, no question. You can teach that.
Yeah,
absolutely. You can't teach 6'3".
He's 6'4", 210-ish, and he ran a 4.36. That you can't teach.
And they were comfortable. Of course, like you said, it was a lower level of football, but they were comfortable handing him the ball too on the end arounds.
Right.
And he had some instincts with the ball.
And
too.
he is a strider. I mean, because he's 6'4". I mean, he can really stride it out.
Speaking of big guys, this player was big, and he has a much thicker body than Watson, Treylon Burks, and he's playing in a major conference, obviously at Arkansas. This guy wins in traffic. Holy cow.
Yeah, I really liked his tape, Chris. I think that, again, he didn't run great yesterday. But
he plays faster than that to me.
Much faster. I mean, but just put on the Alabama tape, and he's running away from the Alabama secondary.
Yeah.
He's big. He's physical. He's got huge hands. He catches everything. He lines up everywhere, which I guess in some people's minds that you could look at that as a positive or a negative. But I think in this era now where people might be looking for the Deebo Samuel type, the Cordero Patterson type, guys who can line up in multiple positions and challenge and threaten the defense in different ways, I think Treylon Burks is a really, really good prospect.
He's got a stiff arm.
Give me a comparable to a pro that people might know.
Well, I think the Deebo Samuel is the way a lot of people might think about him. You know, because he can line up anywhere.
He's stout.
Yeah, he's stout. He was 6'2", 225.
What about a guy like Anquan Bowling? Except he'd run faster.
He runs better.
He runs better.
Yeah,
than
that's
Anquan.
not bad. It's funny you say that. Just talking about
David
speed.
Boston.
I was in the building here when Anquan Boldin ran a 4.72 at the combine, and people were like, "Oh my God, he's never going to play in the NFL." He was pretty good. He was pretty good.
Played a long time.
Yeah,
well, that's where. Yeah. Everybody brings something, and Anquan Boldin's combination of what he brought to the table was different than everybody else. But he was a big, thick guy. David Boston was another guy like that, played for San Diego.
Yeah,
a big, heavy-duty guy. I don't know if he's that thick.
No, he's not.
But yeah, I get that. He's a big body, and he's going to give a lot of DBs some problems because of it. He's a tough matchup, even if he can't. He ran good.
Right, but he plays. Chris is right. He plays much faster. I was actually surprised at his 40 time because he plays much faster.
Yeah, he looked sub 4.5 to me, so I was surprised to see 4.55.
Yeah.
Another guy that's used in a multitude of ways at Kentucky, Wan'Dale Robinson.
He's a guy I haven't seen yet, so let's. Okay. Yeah, he's the guy I haven't seen.
I don't know.
I've seen them on TV a lot because it's funny. I watched Kentucky a lot on TV during the season because they had an offensive coordinator who's actually now back with the Rams, Liam Cohn. And he came from the Rams, so I liked watching their offense. But I haven't studied Robinson in detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else that you are a fan of that you've seen besides some of the guys we mentioned?
Yeah, I really love Garrett Wilson from Ohio State.
Well, yeah.
I think
I don't know if there's anybody that doesn't like him.
He reminds me of Stephon Diggs, quite honestly.
Yeah. He's complete.
Yeah. I'll tell you a guy who might be keep this name in mind, George Pickens.
Oh, the Georgia kid, yeah.
The Georgia kid
came back from an injury.
Tore his ACL in spring practice, played the final 2 or 3 games.
That's a big kid, though. I mean, gigantic.
And he can move. Like, for instance, to me, he is much smoother, more fluid, quicker, faster than Drake London. I think he's a better prospect than Drake London.
I will say this about a guy like that. So he tears his ACL in
spring practice
and gets back, and they – when you're playing for a national championship and for the stakes that the Georgia Bulldogs were playing for at the end of the year, to pull a guy and say, you know what, we need you on the field.
And he comes back.
And he comes back and does that. That says a lot about that
kid. And I bet
he
knew he was going to come out, so he did not have to play.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, off a major injury.
And you think about, too, the coaching staff to trust him the way they did in big moments like that, in the games that they were playing.
That's correct.
That says a lot about what they thought about him.
And I'll give you one other guy who I know ran well, and I guess his vertical jump was really good, whose tape I really liked. Another big receiver, Alec Pierce from Cincinnati. I really liked his tape, and I knew he would. See, again, watching his tape, I knew he was highly athletic. I mean, I couldn't sit here and tell you exactly what he'd run, but I knew from watching his tape he was highly athletic, and I knew that he would test well on the measurables.
Right.
Yeah, 6'3", 211.
No
40.5-inch vertical.
Yeah.
It's no.
And didn't he run under a 4.4 as well?
4.41.
4.4. So, I mean, that's pretty good for 6'3", 211.
It's no surprise that the Cincinnati Bearcats had some guys coming out this year that turned some heads because of the season they put together.
I've heard from talking to people here that program is phenomenal now. Like it's, I mean, whether they're
and they got to keep their coach too, right?
Yeah,
because he signed an extension, I think. To stay
for like
put.
the next 100 years.
Yeah, to stay put. Yeah, they're trying to keep what they got.
Yeah,
and keep on keeping on.
Right.
We will be catching up with Greg through the course of the days and weeks leading up to the draft. We'll probably tap into you, Greg, for more position reviews.
Well, I'll be grinding away, Chris.
Yeah, in the coming days and weeks. So good to catch up with you in person. This is nice. We haven't seen you
awesome.
in a while. We haven't seen anybody in a while,
I know.
quite frankly, so it's good to see you.
Greg Cosell grinds through tape so we don't have to.
There you go.
That's Steve's motto for sure. We will take a break here, but thanks very much for joining us, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.